All right, guys, welcome back to another video. So this upcoming week, we will most likely be hearing what the decision is for the FTC versus Microsoft trial. Now, there were 5 days of deliberations of big people being called up to the stand like Phil Spencer and Satya Nadella and Bobby Kotick, and them giving their responses to hard-hitting questions on how this deal is going to affect consumers. How is this deal, will it be anti-competitive? Is Microsoft going to do things to try to hurt the industry and try to hurt PlayStation specifically? And everything we understand so far is that that won't be the case, as they've been offering 10-year deals for Call of Duty. And Call of Duty was a major game that was focused on here as to the FTC's case to try to block this deal. Now, will this deal be passed? Will Microsoft win in court, or will the FTC win? And I think when you go on social media, you see a lot of different perspectives. You see a lot of people pointing towards the fact that the FTC has a very weak case. And if you're just sitting there listening to some of the stuff the FTC said and asked, if somebody who follows the video game industry, I think it's pretty obvious why people are coming to those conclusions. But I'm not an expert, and a lot of people on social media are not the experts. And maybe we have some bias towards what we want the outcome to be with this deal, depending on where you play your games. So let's read through this article here as the experts are asked as to who they think will win the FTC trial, what they believe the outcome will be. So first of all, one of the things that I would say worked against Microsoft throughout this case was this section here where Judge Jacqueline Scott Corley came out and said that we wouldn't be here if Microsoft had created Call of Duty, basically saying that, believing that Microsoft does not have a hit as big as Call of Duty, which I would say fair. No company out there has a hit as big as Call of Duty. It is by far the biggest game every single year. But in terms of the first-person shooter genre, you could easily argue that Halo is up there in terms of competition with being an extremely popular IP and an extremely popular game that competes in that genre. Now, you people are going to come out and say, hey, well, Halo Infinite didn't do as well. But I mean, overall, if you look at the IP strength of Halo, it is in a very, very strong franchise that I would say is up there with the likes of Call of Duty. And specifically, this is what the judge says. So, well, this is a tweet here. It says, San Francisco judge says that we wouldn't be here if Microsoft made Call of Duty itself. We're here because it wants to buy Call of Duty. We don't benefit from buying. We want to incentivize people to make their own Call of Duty size hits. And the Microsoft lawyer obviously disagreed with this and gave an explanation why this was incorrect, why that purchasing Call of Duty will still incentivize games to be made, still incentivize competition to occur. Now, the decision, like I said, is going to be made within these next 2 weeks. I mean, people are really hoping for it to be this week. She said, I believe at the end of the trial, she wasn't going to take very long to come to this decision. She's not going to take months. You should have a deal or a decision made within the upcoming days. And one of the biggest things, again, is, which is really weird, because if you think about the reason why the CMA blocked the deal initially in the UK, it wasn't because of Call of Duty. It wasn't because of the console harm theory. It was because of cloud gaming. But the FTC seemed to really focus on Call of Duty more so than anything, and especially focusing on how this would affect the PlayStation platform. And it almost seemed like they were there to protect PlayStation. And the judge kind of acknowledged that as well, because she did say, you're not here to protect PlayStation. You're here to protect the consumers, basically saying this is to make sure that there will be no harm to consumers, not no harm to PlayStation. Now, Florian Ederer is associate professor of economics at the Yale School of Management. And this is what Florian has to say in terms of antitrust law, saying, nobody can really say that you're doing anything bad if you're the one that organically grew into a dominant player. Basically, if you're the one who organically made these games from your first party, from the ground up, and it became so dominant that you could use it to hurt other companies, to withhold it from other companies, and potentially try to foreclose other companies because of these games that you organically made. Specifically talking here about something like God of War, which was brought up as an example in the court as an organic, successful game. But it was also talked about how PlayStation Plus, why doesn't Sony just make PlayStation Plus better rather then trying to make sure that games don't show up on these subscription services, and putting games like God of War into that subscription service would make it better. Putting first party games would make it better and easily allow them to continue to compete. Because as we know, Sony has been saying, if Call of Duty comes onto Game Pass but doesn't come onto PlayStation Plus, it is going to be so harmful to them. It's going to be one of those pillars that gets knocked out from under PlayStation, that they may not even be able to operate PlayStation Plus, because it'll just be such a big advantage. That was something way back in documents months ago that they were kind of insinuating. And the judge came back and basically talked about make PlayStation Plus better, and talked about God of War and organic games. In fact, it says Corley pushed the FTC on the possibility that some other game developer could come out with something better if Microsoft bought up Call of Duty. She says, I'm trying to figure out why the emphasis is so much on Call of Duty. Isn't there an argument that will force someone to come up with another good annual game? After all, Mr. Kotick started from essentially nothing, but he was able to do it, right? And the FTC responds here that Call of Duty was a particularly successful, or as some had described it, a unicorn. So basically, the FTC's whole argument is that there will never be another game like Call of Duty. And I would say Call of Duty every year is insanely successful. Even they could literally just cookie cutter everything and release the game, and they're still going to be the top selling game. But I will say that there is always an end to a reign if there isn't innovation and there isn't improvements of these titles. I mean, you've seen the sentiment across the Call of Duty community over many years slowly start to fall down. It has nowhere been as exciting as the days during the PS3 and the Xbox 360 era, where I would say Call of Duty was at its peak. And if they don't ever innovate, if they don't continue to try to improve the game, there will be a game that comes and takes over. I mean, X-Defiant from Ubisoft, a lot of Call of Duty people are talking about it. I'm not saying it's going to take over Call of Duty, but it is one of those games that has a chance to compete with it if it grows into something that people talk about, people play, people hear about. A lot of it has to do with marketing. And I think X-Defiant could be one of those games to keep your eye on as a game that organically comes out of nowhere and tries to compete with Call of Duty. Now it continues here, and they're talking about PC and console gaming. So it says, according to a June survey, they surveyed 1,000 PC and console gamers. 38% surveyed wanted to play Call of Duty, followed by 29% of Fortnite and 29% of Minecraft. And the majority, 31%, were looking forward to the upcoming Call of Duty title the most, followed by Spider-Man 2, the PlayStation exclusive, at 28%. And to be honest, this isn't that big of a difference in terms of the percentage, 31 versus 28. Now, Spider-Man 2 is a PlayStation exclusive, obviously. But the reason why people are so excited about Spider-Man 2, I would say more so than anything, isn't because it's an exclusive. It's because it's Spider-Man. It has that, again, IP notoriety. It has that IP recognition that if you have something that's been built up for many, many years, you can use that IP to compete with the likes of games like Call of Duty. And that's essentially something that will have to happen and will take years. But again, if something comes out, it is far better to play than Call of Duty. It becomes more and more popular. You have all the influencers streaming it and talking about it. There is a chance that there will be something to be able to compete with that game. Now we continue here. Microsoft's economist Dr. Liz Bailey argued on the stand this week that Call of Duty was not unique, that the FTC's economist market definition was too narrow and didn't align with reality, and that if the merger goes through, Activision games will become available on more platforms. Bailey analyzed the market and said that Nintendo was a competitor to PlayStation and Xbox. And if the deal does go through, that is just an absolute fact that Call of Duty will be available to more people. There will be more access, not only on the Nintendo Switch, but also on services like Nvidia, GeForce Now, Boosteroid, Ubisoft, streaming services that previously didn't have access to Call of Duty or to the Activision catalog are now going to have access to that catalog. So this deal overall for gamers in terms of an access perspective is a good thing. And I don't think there really is any way to argue against that, as the FTC really didn't have any arguments against that, which is why they continuously do focus on Call of Duty, because it is something you could hypothetically say Microsoft will use to hurt the competition, even though they have signed a 10-year deal. And we know that the FTC came back and said that they don't know the details of that 10-year deal, which is why they are saying that essentially isn't good enough for not harming competition. Now, they say here, most analysts IGN interviewed agree that the judge was likely to rule in Microsoft's favor. So IGN did some interviews, and and this is the sentiment I'm seeing across social media. This is what I believe as well. But again, when I say I believe this stuff, I can't tell because I'm not a lawyer. I can't, or an economical analyst. I can't tell if I'm coming at this from a biased perspective because I would love to see Activision games on Xbox Game Pass and I love the service, or are my ears being logical and unbiased from everything that I've heard? Listening to the court case, listening to the FTC's case, it really does sound like they didn't have very much there, and that the court should end up ruling in Microsoft's favor based off of everything that was presented at this case. The FTC is kind of, their arguments are very, very weak compared to what Microsoft was able to present and offer in terms of the remedies, and basically going onto the stand and making promises and not being fazed by some of the questions that the FTC was trying to force Microsoft into answering. It seems like they did a very good job. And here is the quote here from the experts as well as Ederer, the analyst, saying, everybody knows that the FTC at the moment is very, very aggressive. Most people expect the FTC not to be successful here. And we also did just see that the FTC is now going after Amazon next. They are trying to do something to stop big tech, like get that medal for being able to stop a big tech in a merger or in whatever that they're doing. That was obviously their goal throughout this current administration, under the Biden administration. That's something that they want to be known for, which definitely seems like what is happening here with Microsoft, that Lina Khan wants to be known for the person that goes out there and was able to stop this merger at any means possible, no matter what happens, even if their case isn't very good. It says here, under the Biden administration, the FTC has been more proactive, including suing Amazon in June for allegedly tricking customers into signing up for Amazon Prime. The Federal Trade Commission isn't bringing cases because they are easy to win. And this is from the legal counsel anti-monopoly advocacy group, the American Economic Liberties Project, Lee Hepner, saying they are bringing cases they anticipate new frontiers of corporate dominance. Microsoft's ambition is to create a monopoly in the fastest growing sector of the entertainment industry at a price that is 70 times the size of Facebook's acquisition of Instagram. And I mean, they want to make sure that these big companies don't believe that they're going to be able to do whatever they want to do, which isn't necessarily always a bad thing, right? But in terms of this specifically, this Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquisition, it just seems like the case that they have isn't very good at all. It says not everything has gone Microsoft's way. The United Kingdom blocked the merger in April, citing cloud gaming as the reason. The FCC continued this line of argument during the hearing, saying that if consoles become obsolete in the future, they'd be replaced by the cloud where Microsoft holds the advantage. And I find this part pretty interesting, but Microsoft obviously holds the advantage in cloud gaming, but it's very, I guess it's organic that they hold the advantage. They're the ones that have done it the best, and they started it from the ground up with Game Pass and xCloud years back, where we've seen competitors like Google try to come in, who are massive companies, have the infrastructure, have the money to be able to compete, and they've just absolutely failed. So I would say they hold the advantage. $1 trillion company, of course, but they've been able to create a subscription service with cloud gaming integrated into it that is far better in terms of value than anything else that is out there. If you're trying to tell me that Amazon and Google don't have the resources and money to try to compete with Microsoft, I would disagree. They've tried to do it. It's just getting into the games industry is difficult. I mean, Xbox got back into the games industry, or got into the console gaming industry way back with the original Xbox. So it's not like they just decided to come in recently, start cloud gaming, use all of their money, put it in there, and then try to dominate the market and be anti-competitive so other people aren't able to compete. They've been working at gaming for years and years and decades, and they've been able to do cloud gaming so far the best. Now, it says here, the FTC also had some evidence on its side. 2 emails, Matt Booty, the head of Xbox Game Studios, from 2019 and 2021. And these are the emails we've talked about where Matt Booty comes out and says that they were going to be able to be in a unique position to be able to outspend Sony. But this is far before the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition. And he's also talking about how content is the moat that we have here. And I believe there are many different ways that these emails aren't actually that significant in terms of helping the FTC's case. We don't know the entire context. Also, again, it is way before the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition. Now, they say, what is next here for the case? Obviously, the judge has to make the decision. And one of the biggest things I think that kind of points towards being in favor of Microsoft will be this part here, where the FTC lawyer, James Weingarten, says the merger is permanent. And Corley interrupted him, saying, "It's not the harm to Sony we care about. It's the harm to consumers." Then she called for a break. So the judge clearly can see here that it looks like the FTC's only argument is here to protect PlayStation. Whether that is intentional or not, everything that they have been presenting has been framed that it's going to harm PlayStation more so than anything. And the judge saw right through that with that quote there, in my opinion, that it's not to the harm of Sony that they care about, it's to the harm of the consumers here that need to be protected. And that is the answer, or that is the question that needs to be answered. Will this deal be anti-competitive in any way that will harm customers in the long run and just overall hurt the industry and hurt the gaming industry? From everything that analysts have been saying, there does not seem like the FTC has a case here, and it does seem like the judge will rule in favor of Microsoft. But as we know, nobody expected, well, I shouldn't say nobody, but most people didn't expect the FTC to block the CMA to block the deal in the UK, and they ended up doing it. So expect the unexpected, I would say. However, from everything that has been presented and from what analysts are saying and experts are saying here, that it looks like Xbox is poised next week or the week after, whenever this decision is made, to win the FTC trial. But I will leave the video there, guys. If you did enjoy this video, hit that thumbs up. If you are new here, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.